Hey, everybody. I'm Lieutenant Joe Pangaro for Pangaro Training. Now, we are going to set off on a journey together, you and me, to learn how to do a complete and thorough criminal investigation. Now, I'm going to say that most of you who are watching this right now have already purchased the book. You've got the interview from Blue 360 Media, and you're going to start reading through it. And the reason we created this series is that we figured it's good to read the book. I made it very clear. I give a lot of examples in here and things, but it's also good to hear from me as well, so that I can sometimes backfill things more than I could just in the book, right? So this program is based on my in-person training course that I do. So in the course of a live presentation, people will ask questions. I will add in a story that I think of, something that happened that reminds me of a way to backfill some of the learning that I want us to do. So to know who I am, I spent 27 years in law enforcement. Most of that time I spent in the Detective Bureau. I learned how to be a good interviewer, not because I was naturally a good interviewer, but because I watched other officers. I saw the patrol officers, the supervisors, the detectives. I watched how they spoke to people. And I took note of who was successful and who wasn't. And I started to put things together and realized the way people speak to people makes a huge difference. So I started to adopt some of the things I saw from some of the people that were very successful, the men and women who were great, not only in my agency, but in other agencies I worked with. So that led me to teaching the course. And that led me to writing the book. So I was going to do this in a couple of different ways. What I was going to do was write a script, use a teleprompter, and talk at you. And I said, that will work. That'll give you the information that's in the book on a video. But it's not the same as having this discussion with you like I do in a class. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right from the book. So if you have the book, right, get it out as we go through this, and you can make notes in the margins. You can dog-ear things. You'll remember some of the extra stories that I tell you and the techniques that come up during that. All right. So when we start with this, chapter 1, the art of interview. Why do I call it the art of interview? Well, I call it the art of interview because it is actually an art. It's a skill that you can learn. So one of the first things I ask in the book here is, who should read this book? Who should take this course? And I can tell you, every single person that has to talk to people should take this course, especially law enforcement. Because as much as we think of law enforcement, we think of, the uniform, the guns, the equipment, raids, car stops, all that. That's all part of what we do. But the reality of what we do is actually talk to people. Power in law enforcement is not by threatening someone or them being afraid of you or intimidating. The power in law enforcement is information. And how do we get information? We talk to people. We need to understand body language. We need to understand how people think. What prevents them from telling the truth? Why do people tell the truth? I got to tell you, I come from a town where we didn't have a lot of crime. There was not a lot of crime around here. But I became a cop and I went to a town where there was a lot of crime. And I was thrown into the middle of that. And I have to figure out how to talk to people in different socioeconomic groups than me, different races than me, different religions than me, different life experiences than I had. And I had to talk to them and discuss their criminal activity or things that they were doing, or if they were victimized, or if they saw something, right? And I had to get that information out of them to make a case, to do my job properly. So that was my impetus for wanting to be a good interviewer, because that is the essence of everything we do. Right, so we're going to talk about a lot of things, some of the words we use appropriately and inappropriately. We're going to talk about understanding the mind of someone who commits crime, the different kinds of crime that people commit, and there's different ways to speak to those people. Right? Because we all have motivations and we have things that go on with us. All right. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to dive into this. Something I hear all the time. I talk to people, I talk to groups, I go and do my thing, and I hear, Well, I'm only a patrol officer. I hate that. I'm only a patrol officer. First of all, patrol is the backbone of every law enforcement agency. If it wasn't for patrol, there would be no crime fighting in any community. Some communities only have patrols. Some small departments only have patrol officers, right? You might have a sergeant and a chief, or you might have a lieutenant and a captain and a chief. Patrol is the essence of what law enforcement is. How many people do you speak to in a day? Lots and lots of people, right? How many crimes do you investigate? You go to burglaries, sexual assaults, you go to robberies, right? You go to all kinds of things, and you're talking to victims, accused, witnesses, all kinds of people. You need to get information out of them, because information is the key to what we're looking for. Information is what solves crimes. So when I look at this, and I've had people say to me, I'm only a patrol officer, I'm only a deputy, I'm only a corrections officer. You got to get rid of that mindset. You are a criminal investigator until you get pulled off that call to go do something else. It's as simple as that. As a lieutenant in my agency, when I moved out of the detective bureau, I moved back into patrol. And one of the things that I tried to hammer home constantly to my officers was, you're not just a patrol officer. You are a criminal investigator until dispatch pulls you off that call. And I instructed all my supervisors, if somebody's working a case, let them work it until either the detectives want to take over or need to take over, or if that officer has to get pulled away from that for another call. Until then, let them investigate. Now, of course, there's parameters on that. You can't let somebody go all day. But I found that my officers, once they got that, they come to me later on and go, hey, you know that burglary I was at yesterday? I never got a chance to canvass. Can I go canvass the neighbors and find out if anybody saw anything? So I'd say, sure, go down to the detective bureau, make sure they didn't do it already, and see if there's anything else you can do while you're out there. Make good use of your time. Go investigate and talk to people. And that's what I found my officers were doing. And it was great. They learned to be better investigators, write better reports. It was a much better deal for everybody. So who should read this book? Anybody that does police work, right? Who can do this? Anybody, right? We can all learn. I tell you, I was not a good interviewer when I started. I had to watch people who were good and adopt the things they were doing so that I could turn them into my own. Because not everything that Lieutenant Joe does are you going to do in an interview. Just like if you and I were partnered, there's things you might say and do, way you would handle someone that I wouldn't. Maybe I'm not comfortable with it. Maybe I don't have experience with it. But we learn from each other, right? We learn from each other. And that's why I'm doing the video series and not just having you read the book. All right. So let's see. Every person in law enforcement, important roles. We all have important roles, don't we? Right? Our jobs are unique to whatever our community needs us for. Some big cities, they run all day long, right? They go out, take a report, move. Which leads me to my next point. You are not just a report taker. And I know sometimes your supervisors kind of look at it that way. Sometimes the higher ups say, you know, uniformed, you guys and girls are report takers. Take your report and move on to the next thing. And I think that's unfortunate because, like I said, we're all investigators. You might hear, see, ask a question, or do something that could solve a crime, that could help the detectives solve a crime, help your community, right? So all of us are involved in this. All right, so who can ask these questions? Well, I already told you, everybody can. And as I look through here, you know, you go talk to somebody, you stop somebody in a car stop. There's been car burglaries in your area, and you stop somebody who you watched from up the street, the car's going, stopping. Maybe you saw somebody jump out, you didn't. Say you're having commercial burglaries, 2 o'clock in the morning, and you're driving up the highway, and there's a closed strip mall, and a car comes pulling out from behind that strip mall. Is that suspicious? Is that a person who works there? Is that a business owner going home? Is that somebody doing work on the building, right? You don't know, but you've had commercial burglaries at strip malls. So you see a car come out of there from closed businesses. Smart thing to do would be to further investigate. Now, depending on your state and your case law, Do you have to have a motor vehicle violation? Well, if you can articulate why you think it might be a crime, then you can make a stop to investigate, right? But make sure you go by what your prosecutor tells you it's okay to do. So talk to them. Call your district attorney, your local county prosecutor. Hey, if I had this circumstance and I saw a car pull out, am I okay to stop that car to investigate what were they doing behind a closed business where we've had burglaries? See, it's not just closed business. It's where you've had burglaries. So you got to put all the facts together, right? So you stop that person and you're going to say, hey, how are you? Can I see your license, registration, your insurance? What did I do, officer? Well, those businesses are closed. Do you work there? Right? You're conducting an investigation. I used to work there a long time ago. Well, what were you doing back there now? Like right now at 2:00 in the morning when they're all closed. Now you say to yourself, what would be a reasonable answer? Might be funny, but what's a reasonable answer they could give you? I had to use the bathroom. I had to go to the bathroom. So I pulled over behind the business to go to the bathroom. And that sounds funny, but isn't it true? Don't people do that? You may have done that coming home from a concert or something. You got a long ride. You really got to go. You're not going to go on a highway. You find a place that you can go. That's legitimate. But you got to follow it up with questions. So here's something important to remember. Write this down. Every question you ask should lead to another question. That's how this works. Oh, okay. Hey, I get it. No big deal. We all got to go. You know what I mean? Where did you go when you were back there? Now, if a person genuinely pulled in behind there because they had to relieve themselves, they'll be able to tell you. It might be embarrassing, but they'll be able to tell you, well, that's a weird question, but, I went back by this dumpster that's back there. And I went, I just wanted to make sure there's no cameras taking pictures of me going, oh, okay. Would you show me where you went? And they said, well, what? And they might even say at that point, if they legitimately did it, they might say, that's a weird question, but okay, I'll show you. So, we've had burglaries in these kinds of businesses. And you're telling me you were back there to use the bathroom. I just want to make sure that that's good. And then you're on your way. Now, a person who was back there trying doors, maybe they got in somewhere, maybe they did something they shouldn't have done, maybe they're, casing the place, they're going to start to give you a hard time now. What are you talking about? Show you where I pay? I'm not showing you where I pay. This is ridiculous. And they come up with this whole thing. And your ability to talk to them and say, listen, I know it's a strange question, but see it from my point of view. You're coming out from behind a closed business. You don't work there. You say you worked there a long time ago. Who'd you work for a long time ago? What's the business? If they stammer and hem and haw and jump around, they're trying to think of something. They're trying to remember a business that was there 5 years ago so they can give you an answer. What we ask and how we ask it is huge to elicit information. So we start to see that they're being deceptive. They're being deceptive. So the reality about asking questions as a law enforcement officer, there are two things we look for when people answer us, and really only two. We look for truth and we look for deception, right? If somebody's telling us the truth, no matter how weird their story is, and they're telling us the truth, there'll be facts to back that up. You'll be able to prove those things and see those things on video or witnesses or whatever. When people are lying to you, when they're making up a story, their story is not going to fit together. They'll be deceptive, right? So when we see deception, we move forward. There's a reason people are being deceptive. So we want to understand why. So that adds the next question. See how this works? I asked a question. Now I'm going to ask another question. If somebody's being truthful, we can clear them out and move them on. That's good. If being deceptive, we have to understand why they're being deceptive. And the question that comes up is, if someone's being deceptive, does that mean they're lying? And the answer is probably, but does that mean, are they guilty of whatever you think they might have done? That's where we have to cut this apart. No, it doesn't mean they're guilty, but it does mean they might be lying and they're being deceptive for a reason, right? There's something they don't want to talk about. They don't want you to know. So I give an example. Let's go out on patrol. We're out on patrol and you get dispatched to a business in your town. It's an office place. There's 40 people working in cubicles. There's a manager in a manager's office. And in that office, the manager keeps a safe and he keeps cash in there, right? And you get a call, hey, get dispatched over to this place, missing cash. So you go over and you meet Phil, the manager, or Tina, the manager, whoever it is. and say, oh, I have in my office, the safe is right there, and there's money missing. There was money there this morning, it's missing now, and I'm making a report. Okay, so you start to ask some questions. Well, who's allowed in that office? Everybody, or are there only certain people? And Phil tells you, well, there's only 5 people that are allowed into my office to do work. Those are these 5 people, and they name them. They're allowed to go in there and do work, even if I'm not here. There's machines in there, there's communication devices, there's printer, all kinds of things that they need that they're allowed to use. Okay, so you start to talk to these people. And you talk to Mary Ellen. Mary Ellen comes in. Mary Ellen, Phil's reporting some missing money. You're allowed to go in there. Did you take the money? No, I did not take the money. That's ridiculous. Matter of fact, I've told Phil 100 times he should lock that safe. He leaves it open all the time. And I told him you're going to have a problem. So no, I did not take the money. Pretty strong answers. We'll go into that a little deeper later on. But pretty strong answers. Seems pretty good. Okay, thank you. She goes out. Frank walks in. Frank, sit down. Missing money. You're allowed to go in there. Did you take the money? I did not take the money. I would not take money. I'm not a thief. I've never been a thief. I've been at this company a very long time, and it's wrong to steal. I would never take that money, and I did not take that money. Pretty good answer. All right. Next one, Muriel comes in. Now, Muriel is not as confident. She seems a little unsure of herself. And you say, hi, Muriel, how you doing? Investigating money stolen from the safe. Did you take the money? And instead of making a strong denial, no, I didn't take the money. Well, you're allowed to go in that room to do business, right? Well, yeah, but I don't hardly ever go in there. I almost never go in that room. But yeah, I'm allowed, but I didn't take any money, and I didn't do anything. And you see this difference in how she's answering questions, and it seems deceptive, right? She seems like she's got something to hide. So we could jump to the conclusion, like many officers do. They jump to a conclusion. Aha, she must be the person who stole it. Our job is to figure out she's being deceptive. How do we move forward? Well, you ask questions. You might even say to her outright, well, you seem very nervous answering my questions. Are you sure you're not involved? And as you talk to her, you find out that she's married and Phil is married. And guess what? They're having an affair. And she does not want to talk about being in that office for any reason whatsoever. Not because she took money, but because she's in a relationship with Phil where she could have problems in her personal life, where Phil could have problems. So she doesn't want to talk about it, and she seems deceptive. So at that point, you might say something like, well, listen, I appreciate that. I don't care what you and Phil are doing. My concern is the money. Did you take the money? No, I absolutely did not take the money, right? So when we ask these questions, one question leads to another. If somebody is appearing deceptive, you have to find out why, because we only look for truth and we look for deception, right? Those are a couple of the big things as we're going here. All right, so who are you as an investigator and as an interviewer? Who are you? What is your skill set? Some people are naturally gifted. They have the gift of gab, right? They go on and on and on. All right, so some questions you want to ask yourself, because you can overcome any negatives and become a very good interviewer. Everybody can. That's why I wrote the book. All right. Am I a people person? Do you like people? Are you interested in people? One of the biggest things that officers should be is curious about things. Why did that person go in that door? Why did they show up now? Why did they say that? Who were their friends? What do they have to win or lose here, right? We have to be curious. I wrote an article for The Blue Magazine, who I write for, about curiosity in the officer and how we should be curious about everything we see and do. It helps us to ask questions. Are you good at small talk? As an interviewer, part of what we're going to do is we have to set people at ease, right? We want them to calm down. They're nervous. They're talking to the police either on a car stop or in a custodial interview or some other location where they're talking to you, the law enforcement officer, and they're very nervous. So we want to set them at ease. So are you good at small talk? And we're going to see how that plays in as we go through the course, right? How do you come across to people? Very important. How do people see you? Are you that tough guy or girl cop? Blah, 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 and you're very forceful all the time. If you only have one mode, you're going to have a problem. An interviewer, a conversationalist, which is what we are, right, has many modes. If you're talking to someone who's really high-powered person, highly educated, you're going to talk to them differently you're going to talk to a street person, or you're going to talk to somebody who's kind of new at this, no experience in getting in trouble. Then you're going to talk to somebody who just did a 10-year bit in Rahway State Prison, right? You have to be able to shift the gears when you're talking to people. How do you come across to people? So in a lot of my classes, I use role players. And at the end of the course, the role players, who are not law enforcement people, they're not cops, they give their opinion to the class on how they felt interacting with them so that the officers can get an idea of how they come across. It's very important to be self-aware. How do you come across? Do you rub people the wrong way? Are you one of those people that a lot of people have a problem with, that always see you're combative, or you're one-dimensional? Figure that out, right? Do you make people feel comfortable? Now, I saw some cops who could go into the most ridiculous situation with a really bad person and start having a conversation with them, calms everybody down, de-escalates everything, and this person is now talking to them, where you would say, why would that person talk to that cop? It's because of the way they handle themselves. Very important. All right? Do you have the gift of gab? Do you just like to hear yourself talk? Right? You just go on and on. Are you confident in your skills? And hopefully when we're done with this video series and the book, you're going to be much more confident, but you have to practice. Let's say that right away. You have to practice this all the time, every day, on everyone you talk to. And I'm going to repeat that as we go through this because it's an important message. Practicing what we're learning, right? Are you a blowhard or a bully? Do you have confidence in your skills? Well, we're going to learn how to not be those things. Introspection. The value of introspection. This is where we're going to end with chapter 1, because that's where it ends in the book. Introspection, understanding who you are as a person. What are your strengths and your weaknesses? What is your purpose? Is your purpose just to have a job and ride around? Are you a bully? Are you a bully? People say that about cops a lot, don't they? Was probably bullied as a kid, so she grew up and wanted to be a cop. He was probably picked on as a kid, wanted to be a cop. That's true in some instances. We don't want to be a part of that. So understanding who you are as a person, how you come across, what do you know and not know? Do you ask questions? Are you curious? Right? Do you want to understand how people think? Very, very important to being a good investigator here. All right, and here's the last thing to really keep in mind about this material and a reality that we all have to understand. An interview is different than an interrogation. So this is one of those areas where understanding the definition of what is an interview, what is an interrogation, how are they different, when do you use each one, is going to be a huge thing for you, the law enforcement officer. So first of all, an interview is a back and forth exchange of information with another person. In our case, it's usually criminal. And we lead the conversation. We go from point A to point B. Point B is a confession or an admission, right? But we want to look like we're just having a conversation. We don't want to put people on edge. We don't want them to be suspicious of our motives. We don't want them to be afraid of us or intimidated. We want them to talk to us. And you do that by building a relationship. And we do that by understanding who we are, how we come across, and how we can soften up the hard parts of our personality and how we can harden up the soft parts of our personality. Because there is a time and place to be forceful and to be strong. But that's not most of the time. You know, the command voice in the academy, have a command voice. There's an absolute time and place for that. There's an absolute time and place to give people direct orders. And then there's times to not do that. So an interview is a back and forth exchange of information. You ask questions, they ask questions. They answer questions, you answer questions. Only we control that dynamic, okay? An interrogation is a much more forceful conversation. We don't need to intimidate people. You never need to lay hands on anybody. The strongest thing you can ever do to somebody is a psychological punch. When you can interact with them, open them up, they trust you, you can get into their head, into their emotion, that is way more powerful than any threat. You see these stupid TV shows where they're smacking people with phone books and yelling at them. That does not work, and it's not appropriate. We are the good guys and the good girls. We always do the right thing. But I'm telling you, understanding how people's heads work, getting inside their head, is much more powerful than any kind of a threat or intimidation you could do. So we want to understand that. A interrogation is a one-sided conversation. You go in, hey, listen, I'm investigating this. I'm glad we talked for a couple hours. I know you're having a hard time telling me the truth. And then they'll try and interrupt you. No, I told you the truth. Stop. You don't let them continue to talk at you. They have one choice: to listen, make an admission, or a confession, and you keep going. My investigation clearly reveals here that you did this. We had 6 witnesses. I'm going to go look at video, and I know you're going to be on there doing bad, but I didn't. You got to stop, right? And sometimes that leads to them making a small admission, which means you might have to change gears and go back into interview. Sometimes that's the thing that you'll see body language changes. And when we talk about body language, we'll talk about the things you're going to be looking for to identify when someone's maybe breaking down, they're getting closer to telling you something, they're giving you cues that you're on the right track or the wrong track, and that's important. And I think the thing that goes with this, understanding who you are, understanding the difference between interview and interrogation, every interaction you have with every person in your life, whether it's law enforcement or not, is an interview, right? Don't we want to know something? Don't we want to learn something? Don't we want to understand this person? Don't we want to get to know this person? We do that by asking and answering questions, interacting with each other. That's how you get confessions and admissions. And that's what we're going to learn in our book, The Interview, and our conversations together. All right? So keep that in mind. And when we start chapter 2, I'm going to cover, like interview and interrogation, words and phrases that do not belong to us, and we use them inappropriately, and it can get you in a lot of trouble. All right, so this is Lieutenant Joe for chapter 1 of The Interview. I'll be back shortly. When you're ready, read up, catch up, make notes. Email me with any questions you might have. Joe@pangarotraining.com. Joe@pangarotraining.com. Say, hey, Lieutenant, I have this case, or I had that case, or I had this situation. I love to help out with these things. I don't know everything, but I know a lot. So I'm here to help you. That's the purpose of the book, the course, and the video work that we're doing here. All right. So we'll be back in a little bit.